John Cobb, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everybody in South Australia in particular.
John, we here on Rural Life TV have been lamenting for some time now the seeming dearth of discussion about matters agriculture and of real meaning to rural Australians over the course of this campaign. Has it been frustrating for someone in your position as the Shadow Minister for Agriculture and Food Security and otherwise that it hasn't been at the forefront of debate?
Well, I've actually been trying to point out how important in the whole debate agriculture is for quite some time.
Yep.
Part of the problem is that the actual Agriculture Minister sees it as so unimportant. A month ago he walked out on VFF, Victorian Farmers Federation, the second biggest organisation in Australia, for opening their annual conference with 12 hours notice. He did the same with New South Wales Farmers, the largest organisation in Australia, last week, and they were good enough to ask me, and I was very happy to do it. So when the Minister decides that tripping around with a PM on issues not part of his portfolio proper, in preference to doing his job, which he's paid to do as a Cabinet Minister, then obviously they don't see agriculture as a big player, and you and I know that we are enormously big players because we're such a large part of the export income, and we set the standard around the world for the quality of produce that we sell.
Yeah, I think we've had a bit of feedback and seen some of the headlines about the fact he did miss those two important conferences, and the apple people were complaining about not being able to see him before the decision on apples. I suppose, John, with the coalition, we certainly won't see a pairing up of portfolios like we've currently got, I hope.
Well, no, it's rather interesting. You wait till an election started to leak out, and I actually had been warning of this because I'd heard rumours, but it's a bit funny to just prior to or during election announce or let slip that you intend to basically spread the portfolio out amongst others. We do look after 80% of the surface of the country, and we are the second biggest export earner in Australia, so I would have thought we were very much worthy of a place at Cabinet. However, Labor don't think so, and I can assure you that the coalition does.
John, just before we do get to some specifics, can I ask you about the battle being fought then by agriculture when it comes to public perception? And I noticed in your own blog you made mention of the fact that it's not considered a sexy industry. You made mention of the fact too that now, 2007, the world's urban population exceeded rural population for the first time in history. Is this election and the dearth of announcements or focus on agriculture simply a sign of the times, or is it a matter of the parties and the politics involved?
Okay, number one, Labor doesn't really have a policy on it.
Right.
We put food security. I was relieved when both Warren Truss and Tony Abbott, when they redid portfolios, when Tony became leader, they agreed to put food security in. And this is because food security, it's not just about having good food, it's about having AQUIS quarantine measures right. It's about the fact that if we don't do something different to Penny Wong, in the Murray-Darling Basin, then there won't be any fresh food. It's about all those things combined. But why hasn't it been? It has been frustrating because I'm the only one talking about it. But at the same time, I think around the states, and you mentioned some of the state organisations in your opening comments, we will be talking to them this week because later this week we'll be announcing our policy for the coming election, and the areas that have been in the news that Labor have ignored, in other words, quarantine, about the BSE and the apples, I was just so strident about that because even though I warned Burke privately and publicly to take notice of the issues with Chinese apples, he refused to do so. And you're quite right. The chairman of the Apple and Pear Corporation, John Corbett, he said he's harder to see than the Queen. And claimed he knew nothing about it until after the event when they'd already agreed to let Chinese apples in. Well, that's totally incorrect. I warned him in Parliament, in front of Parliament, to take notice of the Suzuki fly, but that's another issue. But I hope that from the point of view of those people who need to know these things later in the week, it will take more significance. Unfortunately, Australia has a short memory, but you'll recall I was rather amazed and chuffed and pleased to realise that Australians do get behind issues, the BSE issue, which both the Trade Minister, Simon Crean, and the Agriculture Minister, Tony Burke, were blasé going to really not do their job there. Once we put the issues out there, Australia said, hey, we do have a good product, we want to keep it. They became very sensitive about the issue of letting beef in from countries that had issues with BSE. And I think they are very sensitive about things like apples coming in from countries that may have disease problems. So I think you'll see when I release our policy that it's very much about quarantine and R&D. It's very much about maintaining the fact that we have a natural advantage. Quite apart from the quality of our produce, we are basically disease-free. The world knows that. They're very jealous of it. When I went to Brazil and America to check out the BSE thing earlier this year because we knew it was coming up, I found both the Brazilian and the American ranchers, as they call them, were very aware and very jealous of the advantage we had with our traceback scheme, which they didn't have, couldn't or wouldn't do. And the reason the Americans actually wanted to be able to send beef to Australia was not because they actually want to do it, it's because they want to be able to say to the Japanese and Koreans, if the toughest regime in the world lets our meat in, so should you.
Yeah.
And certainly, John, on this program, we've gone on and on about the resourcing of the quarantine system and the R&D situation, and the returns on R&D that we get out of agriculture are enormous. We just lack investment. That's the that's the issue.
I'll give you the best example I can think of is that while I was over in America early this year, I found out that we can kill here and send non-frozen meat to the US, good cuts, which get there and still have a longer shelf life than the American product. And that is because our R&D, which our abattoirs use for non-contamination, the way in which we package, all these things, is so good, and that's partly publicly funded.
John, we spoke last week with Tasmanian Green Senator Christine